ITM data landscape has a couple of issues. It is unclear which party has which set of data. So we are absolutely familiar with the various companies and institutions within this landscape, but it's really unclear who has what part of the data. By the time you understand who is willing and able to share some of their data, to get to the actual data is very complicated. So we had lots of people say, oh, we are super interested in share data, but to actually get access to it was a bit harder than that we anticipated on to begin with. And up to the point where we actually got the data, we found out that a lot of this data, and obviously that is what the project is about, a lot of this data is in various formats and sometimes it's super complicated to understand what it was about. We have been on phone calls with domain specialists, but also with data owners to help us understand what the data was about, so the interoperability. And last but certainly not least, sometimes it was not even clear, well, we give you the data but we're not sure what you're allowed to do with it, or we have the data but we're not going to give it to you because, well, we're not sure if you're allowed to do with our data what you want to do, etc., etc. So in other words, the data in the ITM landscape is not findable, not accessible, not interoperable, and certainly not reusable. So we need to come up with a framework around that to solve this problem on the long run, and that's where fair data comes in. So what is fair data? It's a set of principles to ensure that data are shared in a way that enables and enhances reuse by humans and machines. So make it findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. And all of these things, and I've mentioned in the intro, all of these things are absolutely applicable to this project. And the fair data principles are more about putting people, and people want to share data with each other, in a certain mindset so that the data can be shared. First of all, you need to make your data findable. So you need to announce it somewhere. And there is no specific framework on how to do it technically, but at least you have to come to the point that if we want to do research on the ITM data, the facilitators, the people who own the data should have a way of making known that they have data that can be used. That's the first part. And then it should be clear what is in the data and how it looks and where it can be found. We've gone through this process, and a lot of people said, well, you can get the data and we'll send it to you, and we have it. But the other part was the accessibility. So how do you get actually access to the data? So we figured out that some of the people who said we're going to share data with you said, well, I see it on my screen, but actually getting it out of the systems is a bit harder than we anticipated. And the other part of accessibility, and it's the third point in this list, is all about, do we allow everybody to get all the data? And specifically all the commercial vendors in the audience, it's absolutely clear that you're not wanting to open up all your systems for anybody else to use. So there should be restrictions and authorizations on your data. The fair data principles on the access part, so the third dot, has absolutely covered in this to make sure that only those people who you give access can actually get to this data. Then the interoperability. And that is mainly what this project is about. Do we understand what it is about? Do we understand what all the fields in the data set mean? Do we have common terminology? Do we have the proper definitions? Do we use the proper vocabulary? And is the data model correct? Interestingly, we have been mainly focusing within this project on this specific problem, which is a problem by itself. But we figured out that along the way that getting access to the data was actually something that needed a lot of attention as well. So the interoperable part is what the project is about, but with the other three elements, it's not going to help a lot. And then the fourth one is the reusability. And a lot of people with reusable think, oh, well, you can open the file, you can access the file, you can copy and paste the data out of it, so then it's reusable, right? Well, yes, but also not completely. And I like to give the example of going on the internet, seeing a nice picture, grabbing the picture from the web and putting it in your slide deck, and then presenting it. So technically it's completely interoperable. PowerPoint understands the picture format, you can use it, you can crop it, and it works nicely. But are you legally allowed? Are you legally allowed to reuse this image? And if you would go to a website of a famous photographer, grab his image and put it on there, you are in a copyright issue. So the reusability part is also about the legal restrictions on reusing this data. So not only the technical one, how does these systems talk to each other, but can we legally do it? And interestingly enough, that part is actually the hardest one to tackle.